As soon as I seen him collapse, I ran. I noticed that there was blood everywhere. He was bleeding.
A scene of horror in the middle of the day on a quiet residential street. A man out walking with a young child stabbed multiple times. The rush to save his life and the mission to find any potential motive.
Good evening. We'll get to that story in a moment, but we begin with breaking news. A resignation in just the last few minutes in connection with a blistering investigation into Ontario's Greenbelt.
A report finding the government favored certain developers when opening up the protected land. Tonight, there's a political casualty. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris is live with all the details. Siobhan.
Well, Nathan, the note from the Premier's office was short at about 5:20, saying that Ryan Amato, the Chief of Staff to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, had resigned and that the Premier had accepted that resignation. It was Ryan Amato who was named in that damning report from the Auditor General 2 weeks ago about the Greenbelt land swap. She says it was that Chief of Staff who pulled together a group in secret to look at removing lands from the Greenbelt for development. She talked about the Chief of Staff running a biased process, one that favored developers close to the government. We know that those developers actually passed information to Amato about lands that they'd like to see removed from the Greenbelt for housing development. So a really a big turn of events here, because we had heard that Ryan Amato did have the confidence of the Premier and his boss, the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs. So quite a big change tonight on that file.
And Siobhan, there are still calls for the minister himself, Steve Clark, to step down.
There are, and I actually just asked the Premier's office a few minutes ago if Doug Ford, the Premier, still has confidence in Steve Clark to run that file, the critical housing file. The answer is a simple yes. But we are already hearing from opposition parties tonight, the Greens and the Liberals, saying that this issue is not going to go away, that Steve Clark does need to give up his post. They don't believe that he didn't know what his Chief of Staff, Ryan Amato, was up to. The Auditor General herself says she believes that he ought to have known, even though we've heard from Clark and from the Premier that they just didn't know. Now, also today, the government has been facing some criticism on another file, a hot potato issue here at Ontario Place, where a redevelopment is in the works. Today, the team behind it shared new renderings responding to some public criticism.